to another impactful night of Impact Education Leadership. This is episode 196. I'm your host, ID35. During Thursday. Tonight's panelists are Dale O'Brien, Buddy Thornton, Dr. Isaac Carrier, Nina Taylor, and Jerry Jones. Ms. Dale O'Brien, please say hello to the people.
Good evening, everyone. This is Dale O'Brien speaking from Dallas, an AP teacher at South High School here in South Dallas.
Thank you for that. And
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You're so welcome and blessed. And with no further ado, Buddy, Positive Change Agent Pro Authority, please say hello again to the people, sir.
Good evening, everybody. This is Buddy Thornton from sunny San Valley, Arizona, where it's 118 degrees, and just loving being here and being on this panel with such an esteemed group.
Oh, it's gonna be good tonight, guys. Go ahead and start sharing this now, because this is gonna be one of those episodes you don't wanna miss. Dr. Isaac Carrier, please say hello to the people, sir.
Good evening, everyone. It's Isaac Carrier. Happy to be here with you all. Very fortunate to be here with you all, because it's certainly an esteemed group of professionals and educators, and I always cringe a little bit going on there with Buddy Thornton, because Buddy is the man, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to talk it over with you all this evening for a little while.
And there it is. And the lovely, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, the lovely Miss Nina Taylor. Please say hello to the people.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be back. I just got back from the Caribbean where the weather was perfect. And I come back here and it's freezing. We actually had to pull jackets out to move because it was like 72 degrees and cloudy, and it was kind of raining on and off. So my heart goes out to the people who are battling the elements right now. I'm just happy to be back.
We are so happy to have you here. And the advocate himself, Dr. Jerry Green, please say hello, sir, and welcome back to the people.
Thank you for having the opportunity to be back on your platform. This Jerry L. Green, Black Student Advocate from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
All right, we're going to dig right in. Listen, this topic right here gave me goosebumps. But, we got to come forth. We got to make it happen. So, with that being said, time is of an essence right now. You talk about politics. You talk about economics. You talk about social interaction. And we had to bring this topic on the forefront. And that is, how will the 2024 election affect public education? I want to open up the panel really quick and go around the horn and ask this question. What were your thoughts when you got the topic for tonight? Who wants to go first?
This is Velma. I thought it was quite apropos.
Thank you for that. Who's next?
This is Jerry Green. I thought a timely question, and again, need some timely answers, because now I'm thinking we're about 118 days to the election. So some things have to happen before we see a major shift in what we have taken for granted for so many years.
I knew you was going to say something like that. Who's next?
Anything else?
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Well, I just was excited about it. With it being an election year, it's the perfect time. Everyone should have a lot of these things on their minds coming into a brand new school year, as well as into an election season. So everybody has a lot of questions and, they need answers.
Talk about it. Who's next?
Go ahead, Dr. Carey.
Thank you, buddy. When I saw the question, my thought was, okay, this is such a lightning rod. I don't know about other parts of the country, but certainly here in Texas. It's a continuation of the conversation that was started, and now a seeming advancement of an agenda. And I think that education for quite some time has been a lightning rod. It seems to be more, more static, for lack of a better term, around election time. So this is something that's always seemingly in the works. Certainly something that deserves to be continuously discussed and worked on. But here in Texas, it is a major issue. And as it is, I'm sure around the country, but it's so blatant. It's been so blatantly politicized here in Texas that it's almost pathetic, to be honest with you. So we definitely need to be having these conversations, and we need people around the country to not only be listening, but to have the opportunity to speak up as well.
Come on, buddy, bring us home.
Dr. Terry, I want to emphasize your word. I want to emphasize your word pathetic, because there are multiple situations where at the state level education funding diversion has been the assault on the public education system that this country not only did not need but cannot withstand for long. The more we drain money out of the public school system to allow people to make personal choices that damage other families and their children, the more we are plying the pump to make sure that we get a larger number of people who may potentially end up on the public dole instead of getting a proper education. Public education should be first and foremost, and I don't care what state you live in.
Absolutely.
Again, this conversation is so important because we're about to talk about policies tonight. We're about to talk about how they're wanting to give education a new blueprint. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about how the different administrations are looking at the playbook as it relates to education. In public education, let's face it, it's between a rock and a hard place. For years, we have been implementing strategies to help recognize the need for an upgraded approach to continual performances and high expectations while trying to accommodate not only to teacher effectiveness, but trying to accommodate to our Section 504 kids and our SPED kids being fairly funded. When we access our data, when we access our documents, and when we show student progress, we do this while trying to be culturally responsive, while trying to respect each individual student's privacy, their differences in ethnicity and culture. But let's face it, we as educators, some of us, are not wanting to deal with those blind spots that we see that create those gaps in instruction. And now it seems like there are laws being set in place to where we can ignore equity, we can ignore inclusion, we can ignore diversity. How do you feel, the panel is open, how do you feel about what I just said, about all these years we fought for, basically this is civil rights, fought for civil rights all these years, and now civil rights, especially when it comes to education, and we're talking about not just education for black and brown, but also for the poor white, is now being threatened. The panel's open. What's your thoughts?
I don't want to. Go ahead, Jerry. Go ahead, Dr. Carrier.
I'm not saying. No, I didn't want us to let too many ticks of the clock go by. So, listen what I'll say. Education has been under siege for a very long time. Civil rights obviously is definitely under attack. We are now being, not only do we ignore diversity, equity, and inclusion, we are being penalized for not ignoring, right? We are being penalized for being inclusive, to specify efforts for diversity. There's no more affirmative action in state colleges colleges are state funded because of the fear, not only fear, but the threat of removal of those funds. And so, look, they've weaponized, and I will say this, it has been weaponized. Our rights have been weaponized. Our right to a full and fair and proper education for our students have been certainly weaponized. And there's a lot. I mean, that's saying and making it sound simple, but there's a lot. I mean, a lot involved in all of that. So let me be quiet because I want to come and do the conversation. But those are my initial thoughts.
That's good. That's good. Who's next?
Well, I think we need to look at history and see what history has taught us. And when I say that, long as Dr. King was talking civil rights, and then everything was an issue. But when he started talking silver rights and dealing with money, that was the issue. And that's where we are now. Is really about the silver rights and the money. And with that, being that the work we do against school districts, advocating for students and black employees, is that we have always seen that districts get money and saying they're there, the money's coming in because of the failing black student, but they can change 7 words on the grant or the proposal and redirect the money. So the civil rights have been up under attack for a long time. Now it's just blatant, and they're coming, and now they let you know the plan, thinking that the vote is not going to be strong enough to stop them. But this has been in the works a long time. And so we have to galvanize, again, 118 days or so to get people to the voting booths to vote for their best interests. And I'll stop there. I'll land the plane there.
You know what? Let me comment on both of what you gentlemen said, because a lot of people in the past, this is what was said. They said money doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter when it comes to education. And so it's not about money. It's about, does this child have the smarts? Does this child have that high expectation and intrinsic motivation to be successful? The panel is still open. What are your thoughts about what I just said? So, that money doesn't matter.
Let me say this right here. It's the poor person who talks and says money doesn't matter. It's never the rich person who says money doesn't matter. It's not the parents who have their kids and the vouchers going to private or paying for private school who don't want the additional $7,000 or so. It's the parents who are in public schools who say money don't matter because they're not educated enough to see what the big picture is. I'll land the plane on that.
That's good. Who's next?
This is Delma. I think money matters a lot. When you are going to have, I'm talking Texas, you have not been putting forth the amount of money, billions of dollars, that the state is not giving the school districts to have the resources, to have the technology for our students, the black and brown students in the public schools. There is a problem. And my question is why? Why would you do that? Why would you keep the money at your office in Austin and not have it come down to where it's needed? Is it because My child is black or brown. With the buzzword, the Project 2025. One segment of that Project 2025 is to abolish the education department. What are you saying to me as a teacher? What are you saying to me about my black and brown students that need an education? If, heaven forbid, that Trump gets in office, and this is just not something bizarre that was written, and it comes to fruition, what are we going to do? It's more than talk about it that we're going to have to do.
Let me say this. The government knows that there's a gap in college career and military readiness. They know it exists. It's been existing for years now. And so, even though there's been many... Go ahead.
No, I just want to add, before I forget, that, what Nina just said is so powerful, because here's the bottom line. They don't care, and they, again, I use the term they as if there's a specific group, and I don't, I'm not trying to get into all of that, but the powers that be do not care about not only the black and brown kids, but the poor white kids, the poor white kids and any other. They don't care about that. And the weaponizing that I mentioned earlier is the withholding of state funding, school funding, for the agenda of pushing, their efforts, or whoever's involved in this efforts, for the school voucher program. But you said something extremely, extremely important, because you talked about the abolishment of the education department. Listen, I don't know that the education department received the amount of respect that it should anyway. I mean, I don't want to get into names, but this name is actually a factual situation. Betsy DeVos was nowhere near possibly even, an inkling qualified to be in that position, to lead that office and lead that effort. And we saw what that led to. That was intentional. So the abolishment of the education department, maybe it's not been demolished, but it certainly has been diminished. And there's going to be a greater and greater attempt to continue that. I will say this. Teachers, educators are the largest voting force, the largest workforce anywhere. We cannot be outnumbered. And on this issue, if we would all just be on the same page, we can control what happens. So it's the politics that will disrupt that, because we're all proud to say that we're teachers. But when it comes to our politics, are we just as proud? Are we willing to jeopardize our own profession and the likelihood of livelihood for our students because of a political agenda?
Oh, that was good.
I want to add something there, but we haven't heard anything from Nina, and I would really love to hear what she has to say about
Absolutely.
how the middle of the country is standing in this huge battle.
Yes, I am a teacher. I'm a first grade teacher, actually, and I just received notice today that our particular school, which I won't name or anything, that we ranked top in the entire state because of our test scores. My individual class, I had 12 children who tested at 5th grade level in reading. 6 were at 3rd grade, and I had 4 that were retained, but the rest of them were above where they were supposed to be. So I'm very proud of that. So I did get an individual mention because of the success of my class. I'm very, very happy about that. But earlier somebody mentioned that is money a factor? Yes, I'm at an inner city school, a public school, and we have no money. Basically, we had to close our music program out because there's no money for instruments and no money to pay a music teacher. So we have no music at our school now. From now on, we'll have music, like somebody plays music, but there's no instrumental music. There's nobody being taught any music, which is very, very important to me. That's how I grew up. I learned instruments in school, and I think it's an important part. So they say we have to cut back because we don't have any money. So what's the first thing to go? The music program. So that's something that we won't have coming into this next school year. But in order to have things that we have and to have the successes that we had, we've had to reach out to the parents. We have different programs that are going on. The school has no money because I don't know why we don't have any money, but we didn't have any extra money for all this extra stuff that we wanted to do, and we depended on the parents to actually dig in their pockets to help us. And I don't know why we're this poor. I don't know why the school has no money. I'm using old books and making copies of the books instead of, saying, oh, we can order new ones, because I don't know if we can, so we're all trying to cut costs where we can because it's needed. It's materials and things that we need, and we don't have it, so we're doing what we can. So I don't know why they don't have money, and there's a teacher shortage in this state as well as a lot of them. I mean, I got about 19 letters saying, hey, you're looking for a job, because everybody is shorthanded. And they're closing down 7 of the schools, including one in this area that everybody in this area grew up with that school. So they're closing down schools as well. So I don't, I haven't gotten the information on why. We just got notice. We heard it on the news that they were closing down 7 schools. So I don't know what's going on. If the election is going to help, yes, then we all do need to vote. We all need to get out and find out who is going to help education in this state because we need it.
Nina, what you said was so...
What part of the country are you in?
I'm in the Midwest.
I'll just leave it at that. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
It's really important that we cap off that conversation. I think everybody had a very powerful statement to make. But I grew up on top of the abolishment of inequity, supposedly, in 1954 when separate but equal was abolished. I grew up through the civil rights movements of the 60s. Now that I'm at 70, I'm looking back and I cannot recall any period in time where the minority population or the poor whites have ever been able to have an equal starting line with anyone in the middle class or affluent American. But right now, in the last 8 years, and certainly with the upcoming elections, both local, state, and federal, all three, there is going to be a march, a harsh march toward equal but separate. The voucher system is nothing but a blatant, in-your-face demand that people who have the ability to move their children and take the money, they can create a barrier for the people who cannot take that money. Here in Arizona, people could get the money, but the $7,500 that they're offering will not allow people in the inner city to take their children to the schools of their choice because they don't have a way. There's no physical way to get those children to and from school. People would have to lose their jobs to get their children to the schools of their choice. So they have to be in the public school. What the voucher system is creating is an educational desert inside every metropolitan area across the country. It is damaging the inner core. And for decades, all I've ever heard politicians say is, we have got to find a way to get the minimum wage up. We've got to get the unemployment down. And yet now they're blatantly saying, we're going to take the money, we're going to give it to the people who can get their children where they want to get it, and they know they've created a physical barrier that will not allow everyone to play at that starting line. And so what they're doing is they're going to increase unemployment, they're going to increase crime, they're going to increase the poverty gap, and nobody's going to win. Nobody can win because even the affluent are going to have to pay more taxes, not to support the schools, but to support the unemployment programs. And they don't understand. They're not smart enough to understand that this is of their own making. They have created this problem, starting with 2016 when Betsy DeVos was made the head of the education department. There has been a physical attack across the country to say we're going to reinvent separate but equal, but we're going to call it equal but separate. And that, 70 years, from 1954 to 2024, we're right back at the exact same starting line, but we're facing the other direction. It's going to get worse, not better.
Buddy, you just blew the whole podcast up. You know that, right? You blew it up. And I was going to say something, but you took the words out of my mouth and made it much better than I could have ever said it. But the word, I took one word from what you said, buddy, and I tried to interweave it with what Delna said and what Jerry Green said, and Dr. Isaac Carrier and Nina. And that was timeline, right? Because if you talk about time, you're talking about going back in the past. And if we were to travel back to, because I want to make sure this is aligned to the topic, if we were to travel all the way back to about 1755, 1750 BC, okay, this is where Babylonia ruled. They were the rulers of the world. And they had this emperor by the name of Hammurabi, right? And we heard about Hammurabi, but we also heard about his code, because he had a system of law, which was one of the first strong governments. And in this government, it was an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but it was also survival of the fittest. It kind of seems like capitalism could be that. And so now we are looking at education as survival of the fittest. We're looking at being a citizen in this country as survival of the fittest. Why do I say that? Well, with over $1.7 trillion in student loan debt from federal or privately funded institutions in the United States, the cost of college has dramatically increased. Dramatically. So much to the point where it's hard to send your child to college unless they have some type of scholarship. And the administration now has tried to even come up with things to help them pay student loans off. Some people agree with that, some people don't. That's okay. But the point remains, it is becoming harder and more difficult to be a citizen in this country. The panel is open. Why is it so difficult now? Buddy, you kind of hit. Buddy, you did talk about that. But why is it so difficult now for citizens of the United States to simply survive? The panel's open.
I think something that we have to think about also, and I'll bring it back to education, is Roe versus Wade. And why is that? Why are they fighting for that? Because of the white population diminishing. So when you look at schools, what are they doing with the vouchers? They're separating their kids or their little girls to be able to go to school and mingle with white males versus mingle with everyone else. So now you have that they're going to be isolated and continue to see bad things on TV, which scare them away from black and brown. So now you're isolating them to get the stereotypes like Buddy said, of 1950s about how black folks are, how brown folks are. And then you mix that into the school where they're saying we're their pure race. We have the money. We have the resources. Look how they act. Because something else we also have to acknowledge is even though the Biden administration had the initiative for black students, it only had one employee and no funding. So for a program to work, you've got to have funding, you got to have authority in your position, and you got to have a staff. So it rolled out like they were doing something big, but they weren't. So I think at the same time, we have to watch whoever gets in office to make sure they're doing right by our students.
Okay, I got
the other thing you got to look at is
Come on.
Go ahead.
No, talk about, because I got to ask you a question. Come on, talk about it.
Okay, and just what a couple people said was going on in Texas, and we're talking K through 12, but how many Prairie View, Texas State, and Tennessee State, and also in Maryland, who didn't get the funding at the upper level, at college level, for their institutions, to continue to let their institutions look second rate, so now our students go to PWIs. So now go ahead with your question.
Now, Jerry Green, listen, sir, Dr. Green, you're the black advocate. We know that. You've been on the podcast many times before. You've established yourself in the community. You did from grassroots to major stage. But let me ask you this question, okay? Now, the reports say, the media says, the society says, even to this day, that African Americans remain the top target of hate crimes. Okay? My question to you is,
yes,
why are public schools underfunded in the United States, and why does that mainly affect black and brown and even poor white demographics? That's my question.
One more time, ask your question. Ask the question again, because I want to make sure I answer it correctly.
Okay. I'm talking about black on black crimes. I'm talking about African Americans remain at the top of the totem pole or the pyramid, whatever you want to call it, whatever taxonomy you want to use, of hate crimes. And so my question to you is, why are public schools underfunded in the U.S., and why does it mainly affect African Americans, Hispanics, and poor whites?
Because we have to identify that we are in a unclaimed or unrecognized war. And the war is on the mind. And so with that, when you say black on black crime, crime is about proximity. If Hispanics live in Hispanics, they do crime. White on white, black on black. But the media pushes and says black on black, you know. And so that's to address that. But the funding is that we have to look at the tax base. We have to look at, again, from that, again, the training of the teachers and the care. Many times teachers got into teaching because someone changed their life, a teacher changed their life. But now they go into teaching and they find out the whole political thing that's going on, and they just want to help the baby. So we got to look at the tax base, we got to look at redirection of funds, and we also have to look at the racism within the public school system of how our students are being treated. And because of that, because how do you have a black student that's a genius from 0 to 4, and then at 5 years old, they disenchanted with school because of how they treated the school? I'll land the plane on that.
Oh, you landed it too. And you landed it so well, I want to open up the panel. Same question. Why are black and brown and poor whites underfunded in our education system today? Panel is open.
one of the biggest
I know
things that
here
happens.
in our city, in our state, state property taxes pays for education. So you have to be a homeowner to pay property tax. Am I correct? If you pay property tax, that means that you own property. Now, in this neighborhood in particularly, only about half of the people own their homes. So only half of them are paying property tax. So we're not getting, a lot of tax money that's supposed to go to education coming from this particular area. Now you go out into the suburbs where everybody owns their homes. They're paying massive amount of property tax every year. That money is going to the education for those schools out there. I think that is one of the main problems. In the inner city, nobody's paying property tax because they're living in public housing and they're not getting those dollars. So it's not going to the schools, and that's why we don't have any money. I think that is what it is. I really do.
Excellent. The panel still.
There's no reason why that can't be balanced into a every child has equal value equation, and money can be balanced at the state level to go to all of the districts. But here's the reality. Everyone who's had any kind of education knows that America by 2050 is going to be a minority-led nation. In other words, if you had a coalition of all of the minority groups, and I want to throw in the poor whites into that equation, that coalition would dominate every election up from that point forward. We're talking about a war, as Dr. Green said, that is being fought by a group who is diminishing not only in size, but they know that it is inevitable that they are going to continue to diminish because the demographics don't lie and you cannot change the equation. So by 2050, if they don't have laws in place to block voting, if they don't have mandates in place to force people into poor education and unemployment, and as a result of the needs-wants equation, more crime in the inner cities to increase the narrative that we don't want to put money there, they think they can hold on to power by that dynamic alone. Right now, in 2025, starting in January 2025, the black population, the brown population, and all the other minority groups need to start a push to create a collaborative effort to make a coalition that brings force to their voice. Dr. Carrier is right. The education system has the largest number of employees. Why can't they vote as a block? So the same math applies. If you could get a minority block that would vote in unison instead of voting on a money scale, then you would find out that you could change the narrative. But it's not going to happen as long as the people who are in power right now continue to put barriers in place to not let those mandates come to be. It's a chisel away effect. We have to start in 2025. Most of the people I serve and I work for are underserved, very, very deserving, disadvantaged populations who need a voice, and the only way you're going to create that is to make a coalition of people who say, enough is enough, we need to change the narrative, and this is not going to change. I could write a paper right now, and it will still be relevant in 2050, and if you don't get together as a group, this is not going to change.
Apartheid in America.
All I can say
I
is,
have a question for the panel. How do you change the apathy among the teachers? Yes, we have one of the largest voting blocks. Yes, we do. But we don't vote because of being apathetic.
well, folks, I'd
So
like
I'm
to
asking
say,
others on the panel, how do you change that in order to change the narrative on everything that is being said?
I think that the situation for teachers in terms of apathy is the fact that they really, teachers bear the brunt of the political game. Here's what I talk about. In the mid-2000s, in Texas, we had what was called the tax test, basic skills test. Somewhere along around 2007, 6 or 7, somewhere around in there. That the standards dramatically increased. And we took a whole different, and to this day, that assessment is still called the same, but it's drastically different from what it was then. It was an intentional change. It was an intentional shift, because the rationale that was given at that time was that, when we made sufficient progress, the test is no longer valid, when we were actually at only 70% proficiency. And the gap between the ethnic groups had greatly diminished, right? So anytime there's progress made by the minority group, the game changes. And all of that pressure gets shifted to the schools and ultimately into the classrooms. I know of principals who met with, second and third graders. And I know this personally because my own daughter, who is now a 22-year-old college graduate, when she was in the 3rd grade, I had no idea this was happening. And her principal thought it was a wise idea for her to meet with the 3rd graders because they were testing for the first time. My daughter went through a whole lot of I want to say psychological issues with school because of that. I think teachers, somebody mentioned it earlier, teachers get in it for the right reasons. But now the whole game has changed. And so this, I feel as though everything that's occurring was intended to occur. We for years have had a fleecing of the teaching field, people entering, right? Now we have all of these EPPs, all of these education preparation programs from non-traditional people taking a non-traditional path to teaching. Well, that's great. It's good for the ones that have maybe missed the boat the first time. But there are a million of reasons. But just like there's a million of reasons people go into any profession, right? But the pressure that teachers face is one of the major reasons why they're apathetic. And I'll tell you this, and this may not be popular, but some of our educational leaders, people in educational leadership positions, guess what? They all get that pressure as well. And so how they handle that pressure and how they pass that on to their teachers, I mean, that's what the whole system breaks down at the bottom level and the foundational level, rather. And the foundational level is at the school level. And so there's a whole lot that goes into it. But let's not forget all of the innuendo and all of the political crap that goes on. And we have never been, in my lifetime, and I'm not as seasoned as Buddy. I'm pretty close. But I will say that I've never seen division like this before. And to support that, I grew up during desegregation and didn't even know we were going through desegregation.
Let me say something. Man, we got to, we almost out of time. We are almost out of time. This conversation is so, I don't even want to use the word juicy. It's so necessary. This conversation is so necessary. Let me throw this at you. Panelists. Let's face it, the real gist of this whole conversation, okay, is about capitalism. Okay, and the fear that capitalism is on the brink of collapse, right? Now let's look at this country. This country was founded upon mercantilism, where the mother countries were, quote unquote, the pimp, right? And their colonies were being pimped to give them the resources. I'm just chunking it real quick so we can get through this. And so here we are in a situation now where in this whole newfound land experience came something that was new from the parochial school, which was, mainly Catholicism or Catholic schools, to public schools that started back in I think it was in Boston, Massachusetts, in like 1600s. The 1600s is when public schools started in the United States. So it was simultaneously starting the same time capitalism was starting, right? And so now there's this restructure because there's this threat of the collapse of capitalism. And so now we're pivoting. And then when COVID-19 happened, then we had to pivot to the digital age. And so let's be real, the uncertainty is causing this survival of the fittest mindset. I heard somebody say mindset earlier, or mind frame, because at the end of the day, we want to survive, but we want to survive in a way that we don't want any handouts. We want to be at the top of the pyramid, right? So with that being said, Nina Taylor, I'm coming down your lane. When I went to a international magnet school in Little Rock, Arkansas. It was Gibbs International Magnet. And when I was there, the governor at the time came to the school to visit, because politicians would come to the school and visit these gifted and talented schools. And so this tall white guy, just white, almost ghostly white, right? He said, "Hey, young man, where do you want to be when you grow up?" And he shook my hand, and that experience changed the trajectory of my life, because I grew up in the hood, and the guy happened to be Bill Clinton, right? He was the governor at that time, but he ended up being the president of the United States. And this man shook my hand, but when he shook my hand, it changed me. The love and listening to him. My question to you is, why is it important for politicians to visit public schools? That's my question.
Whenever I've seen anyone come visit, not been in the public school system since 2012, and there's been various candidates who have come out, judges, people running for governor, mayor, whatever. I don't believe it has anything to do with the kids at all, although, like you said, some can be touched and changed by that. But I believe they're there because they have an agenda. And because, like you said, teachers, we're a very large group of teachers. We have a very large union. Everything is in mass quantities, So I believe that they're making their way around to reach out to those large groups with their agendas, and they're going to try to reach them. Normally when someone's coming, hey, bring the parents. Yeah, parents are invited to come as well and hear what they have to say. So I think it's because they have an agenda and they want to get it out to people who are voting, which is teachers, which is parents, which is administrators, which is union people. I think that's what their main purpose is. Whether depends on the kids, like, their age and everything, whether they'll be moved or changed by it, we don't know. But I believe that is their only purpose for making those visits, is because they have an agenda. They're going to get across the teachers, administrators, our union, and everyone. What do I have to do? Who do I have to talk to? We've had mass meetings with thousands of teachers from all over the state in one spot, just so we can hear these people who are running for judge, all kinds of things like that. Is that necessary? Do you have to gather us here and we have to listen to them? That's what they do. That's how they get their agenda across to us, to mass quantities of people at one time. So I don't think it has anything to do with the kids. I think it's strictly to reach out to voters.
Because I talked about it. I told my grandma, I told Gigi, I was like, let me go to that. Thank you so much, Nina, for that response. Thank you so much. Let me go to Dr. Let me go to Dr. Carey. Dr. Carey, I want to pick on you. I want to pick on you because you started education in your 20s. And you became an assistant principal at 26 years old. And then you went on and got your own school in your early 30s. And you didn't stop there, and then you later went and became a superintendent. Right? And so you've been in the teaching game for quite some time. Right? And, you've seen it. You smelt it. You saw who was meant to do it, and you saw who needed to sit down on the bench and let the real ones play. I'm gonna pick on you because of that. And so Nina said something that was so apropos. She said agenda, right? How can public school leaders, based off of this conversation, based off of let's be real, what's next? What's coming up? We can talk about politics, we can talk about who's going to win the election, but we know the real question is what's next. And what's next is we're going to have to navigate a system as educational leaders, as instructional leaders. We're going to have to navigate a system where we're in a quagmire. I'm pulling from Delta Bryan now. Where we're in a sinking sand, but we still have to navigate through quicksand, through this system. And while we're doing it with our staff, with our teachers, with our students, how can we navigate through all this quagmire and get buy-in? Not only let's just say with all of our stakeholders. How do we get buy-in moving forward? That's my question for you, sir. What's your thoughts?
Well, here's what I'll say. There is no easy or singular answer to your question. Because like as Nia said, there's an agenda. And they come and they visit, we're talking about politicians now. But I can tell you the most detrimental politicians, and this is not going to be popular, but some of the most detrimental politicians are right there in the school district. And that's the school boards. No profession, no other profession is governed by people that are not qualified to work in the profession. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's another profession out there, but not in education. Education is governed by people who win a popular vote, oftentimes unopposed, and even more often with their own agendas. And those agendas do not include kids. I've spoken to superintendents that were early years, and this is recent, year 1, year 2, and I've spoken to superintendents that are in year 20 plus, and they're saying the same thing. They spend more time pandering to school board members than they do focus on being the educational leaders of their districts. So until the structure of the school hierarchy is adjusted and can account for it, and I've not put any thought into how that could actually occur. Because the whole reason is because of tax basis, right? And The people have to have a right, and they should. I'm not advocating that taxpayers don't have a right in or a vote in who is actually governing the policy, which is a play on the word political, of their local school districts. But, some of them get in with pure heart and pure, intentions. But then when those intentions do not jive with, I guess, the political agenda, then problems arise. We've got people that are well intended, but also have their using this as their springboard to greater participation at higher levels of politics, and they do things and look, the fourth largest school district in the country was taken over by the state because of the actions of school board members. Now, what was said was it was because of failing schools, but none of those schools that were in question were failing anymore at the time of the takeover. But the foundation for what was needed for that to at least initiate had already been set. And at that point, we're sticking to the agenda. We're not backing off. And that's exactly what has occurred. And so now we're seeing people's lives completely changed, careers completely demolished because of the politics that's being masked by this so-called intention to do the right and the best for kids. Kids are just political pawns. Teachers are political pawns. Principals are political pawns. Superintendents are political pawns. And I'll be honest with you, I have no even recommendation for a solution to that problem because it is not one that will be easily solved, if ever solved. There's a part of me that believes that maybe, my grandmother used to say this, and I didn't quite understand it. And you're right, I've been in the system for quite some time, but I've also been out of the system the way I was long enough to where I can see what I couldn't see within the system. Because within the system, you are the worker bee. You're going to do all the things, and you're going to do it for the right reason and all this. But at the end of the day, you're just a pawn, right? You talk about courageous leadership and being courageous in your decision making and all of that. And there's a certain extent of that is true, but not to the extent of detriment to yourself. Right? You're not going to stand up against, as a school principal, I don't know any. And I certainly wasn't one that stood up to anybody above me. Because when you're in the system, all you're trying to do is maintain your employment, but at the same time do the very best that you can for kids. And the amount of times you prove that our kids, black, brown, poor, white, even well-to-do, can actually learn, then, what do we really accomplish? They just change the game. Once we collectively make sufficient, or that they consider sufficient progress, then the game gets changed. And that's exactly what has happened over and over again. I wish I knew what the solution was, but at the end of the day, teachers got to continue to fight for kids. All educators have to continue to fight for kids, and we have to do that within the framework that's been set forth for it. Whether it's right or wrong, it's what we have, is what we've had, and as long as the system stays the way that it is, it's what it's going to be. I'm not saying let's accept that. I'm saying there's a lot of smart people in this world, way smarter than I, and we can figure this out. But the first thing is we've got to want to figure it out. Somebody mentioned earlier about having to pivot because of COVID. Well, truth be told, I was trying to do those things years before COVID. COVID hit in what, 2020? In 2010 to 2012, I was already doing a lot of virtual things, but I was looked at as different. And then for about 2015, we had a major issue with, you've heard of these hard to fund, or not hard to fund, but hard to find positions, right? Hard to fill positions. And one of those positions happened at least my circumstance was that it was, foreign language teachers. And I devised a way for us to utilize the human resource that we had for the benefit of more kids in the district that I was working in. And because of a lack of vision and because of a lack of what's the word? I'll just stop at vision. Because of a lack of vision, they shot that down. Yeah, we continue to have students in a classroom being taught by a substitute teacher in an accredited course for which, if students are to receive credit, must be being taught by a certified teacher. And so we ourselves are sometimes part of the problem. We know that there's a lot of evidence that shows that kids that interact in their learning environment is better for them than sitting at a computer. But we have to change how we utilize the computer. Right? We have to get better about how we utilize that resource, which is a very valid global resource, and capitalize on the opportunities within. No, what do? We run back to what was, and we just, we're sufficient. We're fine with that. There's a small segment of kids that are actually in STEM programs, and really focusing on the technology portion of it. When every student, if we're talking about truly providing our kids the opportunity to truly be globally competitive, then we should want that in every classroom. But in 2020, when I took over a school as a result of COVID, what I found was a school that had no technology, none. And so there's so many uneven playing fields in our country, from school to school, district to district, state to state. It is indeed a quagmire. And so, Mr. Jones, I digress. I'm sorry I've taken so long to respond to your question, but there's simply no easy answer if there's an answer at all. We have to really look at what exactly exists, and we have to respond to that in the very best manner that we can, but understanding there are ramifications for the moves that we make, depending on the situations that we're in. I'm transitioning in my career. I'm moving into higher ed, I'm moving into consulting and doing the things that I want to do, that my credentials and my career have afforded me the opportunity to do. And I can see things that I couldn't see as a member of the system. But the system is huge. It is huge. And when politics are at play, and unfortunately they are in every aspect of what we do in this life, there's just simply no easy answer to your question.
You know what? What you said was it was like the lush life. It was so lush and rich and in depth. You almost made me want to change the topic for the night. Because what I heard from what you said, it was really civil rights. It was really civil rights. I feel like after hearing Delma and after hearing Buddy and after hearing Dr. Green and Nina, I feel like education should not be just for the privileged. It shouldn't be just for the quote-unquote select few. Right, Buddy? I feel that education should be the basic rights of everyone, and that's civil rights for all. And we're in America right now. I know we got people listening into this podcast in different countries and different continents, but right now we're talking about the education system in America, which is right now we're talking about the pedagogical standpoint of the education system in America. We're talking about the academic discipline that we are challenged with here in this country and on this part of the world, in this side of the world. And that is despite all the studies, all the prior knowledge, all the skills, all the educational context, right? But we're talking about interaction. Tonight we're talking about how are we interacting with education in this country. And I'm old school. And what I mean by I'm old school, I like how I was taught. I like how I was trained. I like how I was educated. I feel like they did it a lot better, 30 years ago than it's being done now. Even though we have way more technology, but those norms and those protocols and the respect that we had for educators back in the day, it is not the same. It is just not. You can maybe because AI, maybe because artificial intelligence, maybe because we have technology now. Back in the day, you had to read those words, you had to write those words, you had to remember, and it's cognitively we were more, I feel like, developed as scholars to pursue those exploits that we wanted to get in, and the proving ground was much more difficult. If you wanted to be a medical doctor, you really had to earn that. It was no using any LMS systems to help you memorize the test. It was not that. It was hardcore sweat and tears, blood and sweat, and that's how you got to that next level. But that approach, I feel like, and I hate it, I feel like that approach is fading away. Dylan O'Brien, you've been in education over 50 years. I think from all the panelists, you have been in education the longest. And so now we're in we're in a quagmire, but we're also in a decision-making process where this new school year is coming up, right? Back in the day, if you had seniority, then you was the best candidate because you had the experience. Come on now. You had the experience. You knew how to go in there and get a lesson and put it together and chunk the lesson and give scaffolding resources, whether it was vocabulary, whether it was language frames, anchor charts, manipulatives, you name it. Because you lived it, you breathed it, you did the PLCs, the professional learning communities. You knew what you were doing because you had that support, right? So, will hiring teachers of seniority matter in the future? Dr. Carey just said we got so many substitute teachers now because of the shortage of teachers. Does it even matter, Ms. Dylan O'Brien? Honorable Ms. Dylan O'Brien, does it even matter now?
I would vehemently say yes. I would vehemently say yes. It matters. But there's a problem. The problem is that we are going to have to rethink a lot of things. Right now, we are faced with a lack of academic freedom. You talk about a senior teacher. I prefer the term a seasoned teacher. You have to let go. Quite a few districts are going to have to let go of this handcuffing, taking away what we're supposed to be doing in the classrooms. oh, you have to be on certain page at a certain time and a certain topic. No, 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 no. You cannot do that. Especially not now with the type of students that we have that are attached at the hip to their cell phones. Yet they don't use the cell phones for academics. They're using their cell phones to entertain themselves. So your seasoned teacher will need some more freedom in the classroom. We're acting in loco parentis to these students. I think we know, or we should know, what's best for them. It was said that our school boards are not. We have 9 school board members here in Dallas. Of the 9, one is an educator. The majority of the others are lawyers. They're coming from other professions. One is an educator who would understand even halfway what I'm saying, to give those seasoned teachers more freedom in the classroom. We might have to do away with this testing. This testing. You're testing the students to death. They're not through with STAR when they're starting ASVAB, when they're starting CalPAS, they're starting. You are testing them crazy. What are they learning? You need to expose them to a whole lot more. Yes, we are seasoned teachers, but some of us were frustrated, so we left the classroom. But if we were given the liberty to come back and join some of our counterparts that are still here in the trenches, they'll come back because they have the experience. They have a wealth of knowledge that they can add to. The 22 and 23-year-olds that are coming out of college, and some are floundering because they don't know what to do. If you get some of your seasoned teachers coming back as guest teachers, some of them are not wanting the money, or so they're going to say. They'll come in and be guest teachers in a pilot program, but are we going to start something novel, or are we going to play the game and continue to have our students flounder? I would ask that our teachers, that our student teachers, be not dismayed, because there's a lot to be done. A lot can be done still. All we have to do is keep polishing that gemstone that we have. Because some of them sitting in the classroom are little gems. We have to keep polishing them because they themselves don't know what they are, to bring out that goal that we need for tomorrow.
Very, very well said. Very well said. Very, very well said.
I'm giving her major snaps over here. Major snaps over here. And I say this one thing to her, this one thing. Oh my God, I wish I had her with kids when I was a school principal. Listen, guess where they not doing all their testing? Anybody know? What schools aren't they doing all this testing? Private schools?
They're doing all the testing? I was at a school.
No, what schools aren't?
Jerry Green said
all the
it.
time.
Jerry Green
I
said it.
don't know.
Private schools.
He said it.
Private schools.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
They're
The
told,
public school don't need it either.
taught at a private school for 10 years, they're told that they don't need it. All they want
Mhm.
you to do was teach.
Mm-hmm.
Let me,
Oregon all-boys Catholic school in New Orleans, where 98% of them went on to college.
There you go. Thank you. Right there.
So what we see, and Dr. Carrier, I have some clients right now with dealing with that are principals who have fallen up under the sword of the board members. So that's one. Other thing is we have to look at is that you have individuals who have kids in private schools but will put things out and abuse public schools and things like that to disenchant and to give the negative connotation how bad public schools are doing. And also what I've seen is when you have NPSs, non-public schools for special needs students, that public schools put requirements on them that they never could meet. So it's the system playing the system because of money. And that's the thing that I see going on.
listen. I want the listeners. I want you to do this. I want you to go to. I feel like it's on YouTube. I know it's on Netflix. Now I'm sure there's clips on YouTube. I want you to go find this documentary. It's called Crip Camp. That's CRIP Camp, CAMP, and it's a documentary basically talking about what Jerry Green just talked about, and that's civil rights for Section 504. That's civil rights, which I think started in like 1973, actually 1965, and then it went on to 1973 for education for 504, and then Section 504 I think was 1979. Buddy Thornton, let me go to you because I want to pick on you for a little bit. We call you the Positive Social Change Agent Pro for a reason, okay? Because you are, I would say, a mediator expert. When you talk mediation, that's your lane. So I want to go down your lane. I want to ask you a question. Why is mediation important for education moving forward? And why does teacher-student mediation matter? And why does it matter, especially moving forward? Now, despite who wins this election in 2024, we're still going to need mediation. That's something that's not going to go away. It's not going away. It's not going away. So my question, why is mediation important for education?
Well, mediation is important in all aspects of life, but then I'm biased when I say that because I'm a professional mediator. But here, let me cross 3 points, and this will accentuate why we need professional mediators and people to stand up and who are not in the core of education, but are also not in the core of the government, to be the buffer between the two. I keep hearing everybody tell me that 2024 is going to be the most important election of our time. And that is wrong. Because no matter who gets elected, they're a lame duck president. Trump can only serve 2 terms. Biden can only serve 2 terms. Whichever one of them gets elected, we are done with them in 4 years. The narrative that needs to happen, what the mediators need to do, and what people who are reasonable, who have a voice of reason, need to go out and say, look, Yes, vote however you want to vote in the national election. But Dr. Carrier was right. The power of the people is held in the local government. Can you name who your city council members are? Can you name everybody on your school board? Now, okay, you guys are teachers, so you'll be able to do that. But does the general public have the ability to name the people on the school board? No. If you start now, and your goal is to change the narrative for a new, fresh face in 2028, we can change the narrative. But we have to change the narrative that it is important that we focus on local and we take away the power that people who are at the 30,000-foot view have over the local people. If you concentrate on local, you elect people who are responsible and care about the community instead of the political side of the coin, over time, yes, it's going to take time. There's no secrets. You are going to prepare yourself for the most critical election of our entire time, and that will be 2028. Because we need to have a complete whitewash of this country, and in 2028, the minorities and the disenfranchised and the poor people and the people who could create a huge block of voters should take control of the narrative. Why should we condemn more than half of the students to be taught in a devolving education system? Not because the teachers are deficient, but because the schools are not being provided the ability to teach these kids. You can have absolutely fantastic teachers if you take away all their tools and you take away all their permissions, as Delma said. If your hands are tied behind your back, you cannot teach effectively. Every child needs to know that they're going to be taught effectively. And right now in a political environment, that won't happen. So I don't care what happens in 2024. People ask me that all the time. I say, I am preparing for 2028. I want to know who's going to change the narrative, who's going to look around and go, wow, this is messed up. What I hear on this podcast tonight is people in pain. I hear people who are angry. I hear people who care about kids and who know that everything else that we've talked about tonight, the kids are going to be the losers. Because 25 years from now, when they don't have an efficient education and they can't supply a firm foundation for their children and their grandchildren, this country is going to be in the biggest mess it's ever been in. So ignore 2024, except at the local level. Get out in the grassroots, work on your own school boards, work on your city councils, work in your communities, put this country back into a local perspective, and who cares what happens with the federal government in 2024, because in 2028 we get to rewrite the whole thing. And everyone keeps telling me, well, if Trump gets elected, he's going to change it. He's going to become president more than twice. I'm like, no, that will take an amendment to the Constitution, which will not happen in less than 4 years, because no amendment except for prohibition and the removal of prohibition ever happened in less than 4 years. That's a historical fact. So 2028, that's the watchword. Vote local, know local, support local, fight for local, and let the national government do whatever the heck they're going to do.
But buddy, you got me in my feelings right now. I'm not gonna cry because I'm Army. No, I'm joking. But I know you're Navy. Listen, we out of time. We've been out of time, to be honest with you. Man, I feel so emotional right now. The panel was open. What are your takeaways for the night? Whoever wants to go first can go. But let me say this. What was shared tonight was so necessary because, for one, people are hurting. We're hurting. We're angry, and we're traumatized. We're traumatized. We've been through a lot. And the mind, come on, y'all. Just a few years ago, we just went through COVID. We lost all of these these people during COVID-19, it shut the whole world down. We went through that. We experienced that. That was a world disaster. Anyway, the panel's open. What's your takeaways for tonight? Who wants to go first?
Well, my takeaway for tonight is that this is a perfect example of the type of real conversations that need to be had from a myriad of perspectives and levels, but with children at its core, right? I've often heard it said that, it takes time. Yes, it does take time. In education, we want it right now. But at the end of the day, kids don't have time for us to take a whole lot of time to figure it out. And if we fail to engage in these type of dialogue, followed with some actual action, things will not change. But it starts with this, and it's real. It's not politically, motivated. Obviously, I think everyone on this said something that, if you really put it into context, could be, political jeopardy, for lack of a better term. But this is courage. This is what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us to, even when we disagree, to not be disagreeable, as long as we're keeping the main thing, as one of my former superintendents used to say, and the main thing are our kids. They're our babies. And that's where we need to have an extreme focus.
Ms. Delta Bryan, what's your thoughts?
My takeaway is your panel consisted of people from different generations. Because from what I heard, we had from baby boomers to, Generation X. Yet we all have the same passion. We all have the same desires. We want to see our scholars succeed because we are cognizant of the fact that there's a future. We don't know what the future holds, but we have to prepare these scholars well, regardless of all the ideas that these perverse masterminds might have at times. Yes, they keep changing the game plan as soon as you have it figured out. But the thing is, if you follow education long enough, it's the same game plan. They just change the name. That's all they do. They research and they find something they think will fit and change the name. Go back and look at it. Don't let them beat you at the game because you have work to do. And this panel, I found, understood that. Thank you.
I will, first of all, say thanks to everyone for their input. It was a classroom for me as we were speaking tonight. I would also say what this reminds me of is everyone is on the rowing team. We have different sizes. We could be on different sides of the boat, but we're all going in the same direction. And it's just a matter of us all rowing at the same time to make progress. And again, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to be on your podcast tonight.
Isaiah, I think that this panel was incredible. I think the topics were incredible. I think the passion was evident. I think we need people to stand up for society. I think we need people to stand up and understand that kids are the world. We are not the world. We're only the landlords. They own the world. We need to give them a chance to experience in a way that gives them hope. And right now, the way the politicians are mucking up the water and dirtying up the ponds, there's no real hope for a lot of these kids. And we have to be the bastion. We have to be the boundary. We have to be the defenders of their hope. Because they don't know how yet. But if we can teach them how to cling to that hope, and we can put all of our efforts in, even if it just means saving one child at a time, that needs to be our mandate. And we can't let petty politicians who do hold power, but they don't hold power forever. We can't let them be the ones who take our voice away, and they can't be the ones who dash the hopes of literally millions of kids that right now, they don't even care exist.
Impact of Educational Leadership Podcast. Facebook,